Hello world. Hello.
Hi,
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm okay. Changed the view here. I had online gym this morning, so the video is a bit different. Boom, that's better. Yes, that's good. How's your work coming along?
Uh, actually, left the previous company I was at.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that is some big life changes for me, but that also means hopefully I can spend a bit more time, like meeting you all. I've been missing all of our meetings. It's
Yes,
hard to.
we did notice your absence. So yeah, glad you're here. So that's good. And Jonathan is at home and muted. Hey Ken. Oh, there we go.
All right. Yes. Hi.
Hello.
Are you at home? Yes.
I'm at home. Yes. That's well, that's the outside at home, but
Okay.
it's just yeah, working in the dining room, not the worst idea. So that's quite good. Hi Ken.
Hello. Hi.
So I don't know who's coming here today, and we're going to have a little bit of a topic. Sam Brooker will be here. He is one of the hosts of the ACM Hypertext conference in September. So we're going to talk a little bit about conference ideas in XR. But if you guys have any thoughts for either topics we should do, because we're trying to do one per month, very loosely, or any other structure and so on, please do not keep it a secret.
Except from Tom.
Except from Tom. So we don't want Tom to know any of this. But if you do have ideas, Tom, for topics we should have over the next few months and so on, please don't keep it a secret. Oh, someone else should be joining at that point.
If we keep topics a secret, are they still topics?
No, that's why you shouldn't keep them a secret. So yes, that's a good point.
They're ruminations, not topics then.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing I was thinking about today earlier, actually, Tom, your blog is really worthwhile. And we're in this weird information world at the moment where, sorry, my laptop's screen is, well, crooked. Let me just, okay. Where, academics are all PDF and they're blogs like yours, and we don't actually connect them very well. So that's a topic to consider. And here is Sam. The famous Sam is here. Are you in the office, Sam?
No, I'm not, but I've got a blurred background, so I could be absolutely anywhere. That's the exciting world that we live in. We can be floating in the clouds, as some people are, which is incredible. Some people are above the planet, which is even better. So, yeah. But no, I'm actually at home at the moment.
Yeah, I live right between Sam and his work, roughly. So yeah. All right. Yeah. No, Sam. I was just talking to people about topics going forward. This month, of course, will be a conference or something like that in XR, being inspired by the ACM Hypertext conference coming up, having access to data from previous ACM Hypertext conferences. And it may be rubbish, it may be useful. I do have a little bit of an update to show you guys with how the mapping works for that. I took 2023 and put it in the headset. Of course, I expected to have a big update for you today, but of course they're running late. That's the way it is, so maybe next week. But Sam, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about the conference and so on?
Yeah, I'd love to. What I would probably do first is just put a little URL there. So that, for those of you who don't know anything about Hypertext as a conference, I've put a little link there so you can have a quick look at it. If you've been before and you liked it, it's exactly the same. If you've been before and you didn't like it, it's completely different and you will like it this time. It's as you can imagine, all about hypertext, but also the kind of adjacent spaces around it. The topic for hypertext for 2026 is actually hypertext as method, which takes its title from a very good article by Klaus and Peter, who talked about, that's right, who talked about the idea of what hypertext could be beyond thinking about it purely technologically. So more than being kind of text structure, it's also a way of thinking, as we all know, sort of nonlinear, networked, dynamic, which introduces all these different new forms of storytelling, different approaches to argumentation, sense making, to knowledge, and so on. And that's kind of how we've approached it for this year, kind of opening up those peripheries. I think that's obviously relevant to this community as well, with those kind of questions about the kind of place of the human within these structures and how connection and connectivity work, and how we visualize that and operationalize that as well. All those other kinds of ideas as well. So if you are interested, please do have a look through. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer those as well. But for those of you interested, it is in London. It's September 14th to 18th of this coming September. Yes, that was my brief promotional pitch about Hypertext itself. I imagine most people are aware, but so I'd let you know.
Yeah, one of the things that's happening within the hypertext people now, I would say, is a bit more of a shift to, in addition to the academic rationale and analysis, is also more towards doing hypertext type stuff. And I would definitely say that XR comes under that topic. Of course, we have spatial hypertext, and spatialized hypertext is maybe when we have the Z dimension as well. So yeah, no, Sam and I had a meeting a few weeks ago and decided, maybe we can do something, maybe not.
Yeah, I would say in terms of those kind of adjacent disciplines, there's adjacent disciplines from a kind of tech standpoint, but there's also the adjacent disciplines in things like book history, for example. So I think there's these kind of, and I think this is something that we've talked about before, that kind of intersecting and interlocking areas of knowledge and how those things get represented, and what you can gain by kind of connecting with other communities and other domains of knowledge and other sets of experiences, which is a big kind of question for me. I think quite often, and this is something that you've mentioned before, there's that question about what's it for. Like we had a conversation once a long time ago when we were talking about VR, and I was saying it felt like a sort of wow in search of a why, which I think we talked about as a question. It's something, it's exciting, but it's why is it exciting, and what's the specific environments in which it's exciting. I think that one of those questions is obviously important here as well, which is we know it's cool, and and I think XR is a big part of that as well. We know it's cool, we know it's exciting, but it's how you get that really sticky application for it that gets kind of buy-in and connection from other people, as well as it being specifically from your space or people that are kind of sympathizers.
Yeah, that's really relevant. When it comes to the kind of the why, one of the good-natured criticisms of XR is, what's it for? What's it good for? And truly, I at least don't know yet. I mean, there are some cases where it's clearly useful, where things are naturally spatialized, like maps and lots of things. But when it comes to knowledge, we just don't know. So to do what Sam is talking about, having different disciplines talking across, I think is really important, as the whole point of the future of text stuff as well, of course. Oh, I am quiet. Okay, I have very rarely been told I'm quiet, so thank you for that compliment. I will see if I can do that. 1 second. Input. Oh, I don't know if I can actually. That's really weird. I'm using the wireless thing because the sound quality was so awful before, but hang on. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Any difference? I'm guessing not. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. No? Okay.
It's not
I
bad.
mean, we can
It's
we
just
we
not
can
that
hear
bad.
you. You're just significantly quieter than everybody else.
How
That's what I
about
would
now?
say.
Now I'm talking through the normal thing. Is
I
that
might be
better?
Still,
particularly loud. That's a possibility. So I think maybe I'm setting too high.
I think
no,
Sam is quite
no.
loud.
Bit
Jonathan and Ken were also louder.
Yeah, everybody but Frode sounds louder today.
Okay,
Yeah.
what about this? Louder now, right?
Now
That's
you
the
sound even
same.
softer.
Really? Okay, I'm so apologetic. Okay, Sam, fill the air with all kinds of interesting notions, and I will check this out because I've tried 2 different microphones now.
Try jacking it in Zoom.
Yeah.
There are multiple, unfortunately, multiple volume sliders
1, 2,
that
3, 1, 2, 3.
sometimes get out of whack.
1, 2, 3. That's very weird. It is on the max input, actually. Is this any different now? 1, 2, 3?
Yeah, it's a little better.
Little
That's
better.
a little better.
All right.
Moving in the right direction.
Okay, I'm not sure if I can do more. I'll just have to be more aggressive for once. Right, so actually that is a bit of a problem because, hang on. In a second, I'm going to step away from the microphone, so let me try this. But yeah, if anyone has anything interesting, please go ahead.
Maybe I should. Frode, just before we started, was asking for ideas for topics to discuss. I don't know if it's just for today or for this week. And I just thought I'd say, since this touches on something Sam was saying, I'm not sure we ever directly address the question of the visual representation of meaning as opposed to text. So obviously this is a huge topic, and Tom touches on it. I think everyone touches on it all the time, but I'm not sure, and Frode, correct me if I'm wrong, that we ever directly address it. The ways in which you can show information, say, extracted from text without using text or without using much text. Infographics and so on are various ways of doing this. It seems to me this is a central issue, and it crops up in the VR features, Excel features Frode has been doing and so on, because a lot of the time people just rely on the assumption that summaries and other information extracted from text can be produced somehow, but those are just more text. And of course, obviously you can get overwhelmed from that. And there are endless ways people have tried, I mean, emojis and so on, but I don't know if that's a topic we ever directly discuss.
First of all, is the voice better now? You can hear me better? Okay. We're not going to go away from text in the future of text, but we definitely need to figure out more visual ways to be with text. So it's absolutely something we can finesse. Okay, so I'm actually ready for a little bit of an update, and I just got one. I don't know if you noticed, I had to tab away for a second. They just gave me something. I'll share in a second here. 1 second, guys, because there are some specific things. Okay. I turned the mic into my phone, which is here. You can see now. But now I'm going to. You can see, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Yes.
Just going to go to test flight to make sure. Okay, author will update, which is all very exciting, at least for me. There we go. Now, I did have some slides, but I'm not going to waste time on that now. What I'm going to do is open author. And please remember that this is a native app, meaning I actually have less control over the interaction. So I'm going to open Hypertext 23. So here we have a normal document. All of these are articles. Going to make the bar. I wish this didn't have to be like this. It's a bit weird, but that's the way it is now. So I go to map and I wait a few seconds because it's a bit massive. And here we have the information from the conference. You can see this, right? I promise I won't keep asking, but
Yes.
Okay, cool. Over here, all this the same stuff. That's actual citations. They don't integrate into the environment yet. So right now they're all just noise. So I'm just going to move them away a little bit. Oops, I didn't mean to move that away. So what I've done, just for fun, these are the papers. So double tap to see a basic a summary. Sometimes they have the abstract and so on. And you notice there are some lines. The lines now only appear when it's selected and opened. Or, oh, good, this is the update. So as long as it's open, there are lines. So if I do this, it goes into the focus mode, which is really, really important. Now, everything that isn't selected or connected is hidden. I can do focus by tapping here, and I will unfocus. See, that toolbar is a bit weird. I'll just do show all instead, right? So it's a really convenient way to go through things. You see the buttons here, D, select, show, and A. Can anyone guess what the D is for?
Destiny.
Debug.
It is deselect. Right? The logic is that select is to select specific things like all people or whatever, right? And also the A after show is to show everything. So if we've hidden stuff, let's say we've been on focus, we just hit the A like that. Does that make sense? It's a huge part of the design trying to figure out what should be in the select menu. Like right now, we're going to select people. This has all been updated just now. So now all the people are selected. So we can do things like this. So those guys didn't have the correct metadata. So now we can do layout. Yeah, sorry, Apple's being really annoying by forcing us to use this. That goes up. We align left.
Forcing the full screen or exclusive or?
What's no, I can't get rid of the initial window. So here, this is still a window because it has to have an anchor in the environment because you can have many things happening. So this little bar, when I go like this, sometimes it gets a little confusing and moves around. Anyway, so here we have all the people. So they've been selected like this. And we can do the layouts. We can even try to do things. Right now, we don't have any time values, but it can sort by time as well. But we can do sort depth. See if that works. Okay, so that's way down. Let's pull them up. These are some of the, I would like to think of as fun bugs. Why this goes like this. This is what we're working on. So we also have this, snap. Snap, I think most of you have seen it. All it does is take whatever it is and puts it on the 0Z, which turns out to be really, really convenient with the organizing things. So now I do D for deselect again. And just randomly, I've grouped some locations down here so we can see where people are from. Oops. To open this, and there's a lot of people. So the space management is really, really important. And as you know, being able to read is really easy. Now, the last few things to show you is if you're going to do actual work on here, you need to be able to do basic annotation. And one of them is like, which is saved when you leave the environment. So I've now liked that one. And this one, for whatever reason, I pretend I don't like, so I hide it. So you can go through and liking and hiding and all of that stuff and seeing how things relate. What happened there? Even on an M5, it can actually get quite slow. So it seems to have decided to have a pause, but you're still there, right?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, good. So now you have options to view the hidden ones. So you can unhide them. Liked ones, you can choose to. The reason there's a pop-up menu for hidden, there will also be a delete, but that's a bit scary to do right now. But we have these options, show only liked, not liked, and so on. So you can instantly see what you liked in this space. They shouldn't be there. That's an interesting bug. So we go back to all. Yeah, the last few things to show you. The focus. So I do like the fact that we can have this bar. And by the way, this one and this one shouldn't be there. It was in an earlier design, so don't worry about it. It should be more obvious. But they're useful as learning devices. So we do the focus, and then we do all. But there are some gestures that really work, like this one, pinch and move out. Well, yeah, there you go. Doesn't that kind of make sense for a focus action? You just say, this is important, like, make it come big. And another thing that I've discovered while playing with this is, and this is something we all know from our theoretical experience, but so this thing now fits really well in the room, but when it goes into the wall, and that's something that, unless you're on the headset, is really hard to experience. It doesn't matter, right? It's not that the wall disappears, but in terms of me reaching it, it makes absolutely no difference. That's on the floor, really doesn't matter. Isn't that kind of cool? Now do this again, and we get, whoops. Of course.
Rhoda, have you looked at the custom environments ability to be able to add a custom environment to your app so that you can be in other sort of blank or similarly sort of supportive environments for this information navigation? I mean, obviously, augmented reality is really good. And I found that the sort of clarity of being on all black or all white or these other kind of latent spaces for sort of navigating this information within have some benefit as well.
I have not looked at that. I just wanted to show you a last thing before I take the headset off. I've been playing manually with this, so that's what it's a bit messy. But I have a category called context. I'll address that more properly, Brandel, when I'm out of the headset.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure why these guys, that's a mistake. But we have a category called context, because that way you can choose, first of all, to move the context, and you can copy it in, so you can always have the same thing. But if I now deselect, and these are labels, right? So if I have here, ignore context on, you see there's a check mark. If I go labels, it won't select them. The point of that is you may want to have specific people that are new to the environment, but some, like, let's say, Ted Nelson, hypertext guy, who is contextual, he should always be there. When you do different operations, he's not affected. Any questions before I finish?
Could you repeat the gesture for, was it liking something or like favoriting something?
That's not a gesture yet. And thank you for asking about the gesture. Liking is here, hiding is here. The gestures we have are very few, because it is actually more reliable to tap a button, which is hugely unsexy. But currently we have look at something and drag, look at something and pinch to select, look at something and pinch and double tap to select it. We only allow one to be open at a time, otherwise it gets really messy. So what we're also planning to do, the snap, this thing, we're trying to look at a gesture called this. Okay, it's not working now, we haven't done it, but you know when you're in a browser, if you pinch and flip up to scroll, that can actually be used here. So we want that to be the going to Z. We're thinking of having the opposite, pulling down, to either show all or hide. So yeah, we're not as far with the gestures as we would like to be yet. Finally, just this is kind of important too. Let me just deselect views here. I can now save really fun view. And then I go move things about, whatever, views, even more fun view. So now I can toggle between those really quickly. You see it changes a bit. Really important stuff. When you're working on this, it's a lot less data messy than a 2D screen, but there is still a ton of stuff. So you want to be able to have your specific layouts for specific things, like, you know, automatically hide all of this or automatically see that. Any final questions before I come out?
So I'm wondering, are you really leveraging the three-dimensional environment at all? It still looks like a bunch of, refrigerator magnets or something stuck on a wall.
I think that's a very fair question. And I would say yes, but absolutely it could be more. One of them is just having depth actually helps me organize. Like if I look at these two from the straight front, they're really close, right? These are labels to help me to see what's connected to this and that. But because it's further back, it's a lot less taxing to see. Now also, one thing that okay, let me just do this. Select labels. Come on. Oh, okay, that, I did the ignore context thing, so now I do. Select labels, so I can move these here. Now, I haven't decided what to do with the back yet, but being able to have, and they snap back now, but being able to have things, you know, like maybe the locations, which aren't that relevant, but it's nice to have here. So I have to go all the way back to view them. Now, I absolutely agree that it should be possible to take this and snap it onto the wall, at least. But I do find, I had gym this morning and I was 15 minutes late, which has never happened before. Purely because playing like this, even on this super simple, is really compelling. You know, you just want to fiddle.
So what I was thinking might make it a little more three-dimensional and visually three-dimensional is, can you enter in additional colors and maybe like think of it as a heat map. So the further away you are from a topic, it's still there in the visual field, but maybe it becomes a cooler color versus ones that are closer or something like that.
I'm not very.
You can.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt. Please go on.
Yeah. No, maybe it's because we're looking at it on a two-dimensional screen, but it's just very visually busy.
Yeah, it is. And I'm going to just send you a page. I mean, there are, so if you just go on this page here, because when I've been doing this pitch for this organization that you all know about, doing the videos is really awful. If you click on that link and have a look at the bottom, it's a really simple animation just to give an idea. But as Ken and Brandel can really testify to, being an XR is really, really different. A little bit stereoscopic, but the movement as well. Color should definitely come in at some point. One of the things I think we need to discuss as a community is how to annotate these things. Like and hide is not enough. How do you write something on there? The way that they are visually distinguished already, and this goes a little bit to Jonathan, people's names are italic, places are bold, institutions are bold italic, blah, 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 right? That works on a 2D screen, but when you have these little pastels, which I'm trying to make smaller, it's not quite as clear. Brandel, you were talking about artificial environments, right?
Yeah, just the immersive environment sort of background stuff. I'm not sure if you have the Disney Plus app, but it has a number of environments that you can watch TV in. You can do more than watch TV in them as well. The web supports them too. I'm sort of working on how to promote and describe that. But in a native app, certainly people can do that, and they can be very little. They can just be an inside-out box to provide and convey a certain color or a sense of scale. One of the things, as you were sort of talking about moving them around, that I was conscious of was, David Kirsch and his description of epistemic actions, the idea of sorting and piling and things like that, and having a space that has those nominal kind of locations and destinations for things would be really interesting to say, like, if I am doing this kind of thing, I actually have this environment, versus have that environment. And so you have like content, and then you have framework, both as sort of being conveyed as space. You wouldn't have to do it in a purely virtual environment as well. You could have like a novel template for sort of little colored zones or something like that. But yeah, that was sort of as far as I was going with it.
Yeah, briefly on that, we're not allowed to use the built-in backgrounds.
12
It has to
o'clock.
be AR in the environment we're building. I think it's completely right what you're saying. I wouldn't want someone to be in a fake environment. I really want to encourage movements. But especially in the topic we're talking about now, about a conference, to be able to have things in space, backgrounds, little boxes, especially for having something for a timeline for the event or other things, is absolutely very much worth looking at. Ken, please.
So what Brandel said made me think about the larger picture of the physical houses that we live in continue to evolve because we get new technologies. You get garages, you arrange things differently because of air conditioning, you have different ways of cooking, refrigerators. Your old-fashioned writing desk gets replaced by something that's optimized for putting your computer on it. So I think it might not be too soon to think about at some point when these things get replaced by the glasses and it's just your house, how will your actual physical house evolve because you're expecting that it becomes an instrument that has other uses when you're wearing?
100%. I think that is super important. And with the Apple Vision Pro, you leave a room and then you look back in the room, you can see through the wall, which is weird, right? In this context, Ken, is that good or bad? Right? It just literally changes how we are. Now, I do want to very, very defensively say that the reason the data example we have is a cube virtually, but stretches at any size and always spaces, is for the data format. I'm really advocating an interchange format that is, here's a node in one list. I know most of you know this. I think it's new only to Sam. Here's a list of citations. Here's a list of glossary terms. And separately, here's the layout, XYZ, 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 and ID. It doesn't say what angle, what font, what color, none of that is there. All of that should be possible to add. So Ken, and also Brandel, what you're talking about is quite far beyond that in a very good way. By the way, Brandel, I think you have the coolest virtual background. It's so realistic.
I really like it at the moment. The arrangement, we got a big door. And
Yeah.
And that spot where the cat lives is also really fun. I think it may be too early, but maybe only just about the spaces and the environments that we occupy. Something that people don't pay as much attention to in the mother of all demos is at the end when I think he credits Herman Miller on working on the furniture and the sort of the arrangement of the desk and the laptop, the lap bar that has all of the equipment on it, and like the actual arrangement and structure of the space around us that we're doing these things in is absolutely ripe for disruption, for want of a kinder term. But yeah, I agree. Like there are multiple stages and multiple ways of sort of pursuing it.
Yeah, thanks, Brandel. Peter.
Yeah, I love the furniture from Project Cybersyn. That was wild. Sort of had that Star Trek captain's chair look to it. Also, I think I might want to have a room if I was getting a new house built that had hollow tiles on the floor, or just like a dedicated VR room, as opposed to having to worry about walking into an end table or something. So I think in the future we'll see people having dedicated house. At the very least, I'd want to have one room that is painted my green screen background so that I wouldn't have to hoist the screen when I go on for Zoom calls. I could just let the room itself be my green screen. So I can see that as a variation in the future. Maybe rooms where people have the wall and floor seamlessly curve into each other so that there are no visible seams for going online in simulated environments.
Absolutely. But since we are lucky enough to have Sam here today, let's see how all of these ideas come together for a week-long conference, which is very similar to what we're doing on our Monday meetings, right? We just do them, we do 52 of them instead of 5 of them, right? What is a cool and useful way of showing a little bit about who people are, where the different places are, and also giving a way to access the papers? One of the big problems, in a good sense, of a really good conference is you don't get any papers, it's all secret, then it starts, suddenly you have over 30. And you have to read them quickly, at least aside, right? That's probably one use case to start with. But once you've kind of gone through, I like and I don't like, how can you start building a shape of your experience?
Was that a rhetorical question?
No. Oh, I'm sorry, I should be drinking to indicate I'm truly waiting for you guys. No rhetoric involved.
I mean, if only because my name was in the preceding paragraph. I can talk a little bit about sort of how I would approach it and how I would say it. It was really interesting here in the previous section, kind of aligning it with some of the challenges we've had in our project I'm working on that involves spatial hypertext. Because one of the interesting questions with that is about what proximity means within that particular environment or that particular space. Because as you drag things closer or further away, people read that as having some kind of implicit meaning. And then once you get overlap, that's assumed to have a meaning. And then when you're kind of creating explicit connections versus implicit connections, and those have their own meaning as well. And the difficulty we've had in user testing is that there's a grammar to that space that we understand, but we kind of want people to discover their own grammar for that space. And I think there's a similar sort of problem with how it would work with the conference, which is, do you want to say the grammar is prominence, right? So do we want a means by which we can say, well, these are the people who are important in this community, so you should privilege their work. And here are the people who, but then that's not how I would approach papers when I was reading for a conference. I'd be saying, well, what are the things that are interesting to me? What seems to grab me? What seems like a trend at the moment? What's something I want to actively move away from rather than towards? So I think there is a sort of interesting problem about what's the grammar of the space that you're creating, and do you want a curated space that's created by the people who run the conference? Is there a role for a grammar chair or a space chair? Or space chair sounds amazing, so I think if someone offered me the role of a space chair, I'd immediately take it. But is it something where someone else has to lay out that relationship and then you engage with it yourself? Or do you want to begin with a relatively open space, which you then start to map afterwards? I think I've done 3 questions there, so I'll stop.
And I think Ken will build on that.
Yes, I think that what Sam said is very thought-provoking, and I would point out that the one thing we're not changing is our own biology of our brain and our body. We're building tools around that. So if we look at that, hundreds of thousands of year old fixed point, and we ask, how does every child perceive the world and then learn and grow? There are always 2 hierarchies. There's the hierarchy of what the tribe has decided to, like, here are the government buildings and here are the roads and here's whatever. And then there's the hierarchy of my voting with my body. I am going here. This is near to me. This is far to me. I'm hanging out with my relatives. I'm blah, blah, blah. So the way our brains work is we're always reconciling a shared hierarchy with a personal hierarchy. And I think we can see that in how we've been designing our interfaces. So I would posit that whatever the solution is to the set of questions that Sam is bringing, it has to have that dual personal hierarchy versus shared group tribe hierarchy navigation structure about it. Otherwise, it won't make sense to people.
I think that's very important. I just added here in that what I was trying to show when I do these demos and the head moves way too fast, which it shouldn't, but it's just hard not to, is I'm trying to support people as smoothly in terms of good interfaces, being able to make their own spaces, all people there, all this there, this way, that way, whatever way, is really, really important. And in order to do that, and unfortunately, Mark Anderson had to work tonight. We got to have the metadata. These individual nodes need to know what they are. So you can say, all the papers from China, I don't want to read right now. And you put them there, etc. And I think what you're both talking about, Sam and Ken, we're talking about a space chair. You saw the views. By the way, it's finally found a name. It used to be called configurations or layouts, but the views, that should be shareable, right? So you should be able to import, let's say, when these academic papers are given, here is the chair's view of this. And then maybe somebody else in the community says, no, I got a different view, somebody you relate to more, and here it is. And then you can fiddle with it, and you can change it and send it. So the view layout spatially becomes much stronger than a 2D or even, obviously a column layout. I'm very glad we're addressing the questions of where the structure should come from.
I was going to say, just because Ken kind of triggered off a memory of a conversation I had with somebody about conferences and particularly expos. So during COVID, everything moved online. And so everyone immediately started trying to do what they'd previously done at the coffee table or that they'd previously done in the conference, which is to just all talk simultaneously, which obviously didn't work. So then we imposed this incredibly rigid structure, which is there's the chat, which is where this kind of conversation takes place, and you can do this kind of threaded conversation and this kind of thing. Yeah. And so we all kind of developed this shared sort of tribal language, this way in which we used these spaces and communicated. And then when everyone moved back to physical conferences, everyone who'd been to physical conferences in the past was like, oh, thank God, I can abandon all that new knowledge that I've built and go back to a proper conference where I walk over. I know how to confidently walk up to 3 complete strangers and start talking to them. I know when it's time for me to whisper a conversation to the person next to me, and when I go, oh, someone stop, and all those sorts of subtle cues and clues that you develop in that environment. And all the young people who'd arrived during COVID had absolutely no idea how any of that worked because they hadn't developed all that language. And suddenly they were all excluded from those kinds of conversations. So I think another part of this is that generational understanding of how these things work. And again, I think that can also go to community understandings. Your system works extraordinarily well for me because I understand the underlying logic behind why you've made the decisions in it, and it's great. But does that apply to everybody? And if I were to introduce that to someone in healthcare, for example, would they understand what was actually trying to be achieved with that space? So I think there's a lot of these kind of interesting intersecting questions and problems around generational communities and around specific communities and all those other kinds of things, which conferences really need to address and which this could. But I think a lot of that is about who's imposing what and at what point.
When you bring in that, it makes me think of things like Second Life and having avatars in a room also, of course. And one thing I would love to see more in our community is more written stuff, shock, horror, surprise, surprise text. And in a spatial environment, it would be really, really interesting to see, let's say Ken really likes Peter's paper and he's written a post about it somehow. We need to know what that somehow means and attached it to the paper. And the rest of us who cares about Ken's feelings and perspectives and intellect, we have it too, right? We did, with the whole Sloan thing, one of the things we really looked at last year was annotations, spatial annotations. We made all kinds of messy things on purpose, was the whole point. But Sam, specifically to you, could you imagine, and forget what you saw now, that, you know, what I'm building is a very, very simplistic thing, but could you imagine an environment where, including young people, can look at these knowledge structures and add their own point of view in a way that could be shared? Could there be value to that?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I was thinking as you were talking there about, I don't know if anyone here is a jazz musician and knows the phrase something fixed, something free, which is one of those things that jazz musicians often use, which is that you establish certain parameters, but within that, there's a lot of improvisation. And I think that's, again, going back to a conversation from earlier on, why text is such a useful tool, because it's so universally understood, because you know, you see the word conveys its meaning. It's got great utility. It's very flexible. You can apply lots of stuff to it. You can change the color, you can change the stuff around it, but ultimately, not to get into Saussure and the complexity of of the linguistic sign or all that kind of stuff. I write the word dog and you know what I'm talking about, and you're not going to say, oh, presumably you mean giraffe. So those kind of fixed elements, which is again why I think there's some value in the idea of the conference paper as well, for all the others have questions about it. It's something fixed, it's something tangible, it's something with real parameters. My paper may be superior in some ways to other people's papers and inferior to others, but at least we're all using roughly the same structure. And I suppose then the question is, if we're going to keep these fixed structures like the academic paper, which doesn't seem to be going anywhere, despite the fact that we've had various different alternatives, if we're keeping that fixed, then the free thing is the connectivity, it's the relationships, it's the proximity, and all those other things which actually currently are fair game and are free for all, and anyone can think about how those might work. And then it's about how we make those feel like an exciting augmentation rather than a kind of fussy overlay that's getting in the way of what you actually want to do, which is to just throw stuff around and toss. And I was really taken with that conversation about the desk, which I've heard a number of people talking about, which is what your desk looks like versus what your desktop looks like versus how you would like your space to look. My desk is my kitchen table, so I've got an awful lot of stuff at the moment on here which is nothing to do with work. That's a space that's messily organized, but I can organize it if I need to. So I think that in that kinesthetic dimension, that spatial dimension, all those other things, those are all the things which currently could mean anything. And I think if we keep these fixed elements like the paper, then when somebody introduces those things, I think you'd need to introduce a very rigid grammar to what that meant, and then keep other areas that people could say, okay, and this is the bit that's fair game, and you can decide it. And I think again, there's a sort of hierarchy of control that you'd have to think about what you were ceding to other people and what you wanted to control for yourself.
This is very, very exciting. So on that topic, believe it or not, and that's why my wife just came in. Sorry, the wind slammed the door. It's finally warm enough in London to have temperature. I'm reading this. It is a phenomenal book. I'm not particularly religious, so don't worry, I'm not bringing that. But I'm going to read you a little bit of this from the introduction. We're talking about what is the Bible? Because asking what is the Bible is similar to asking what is an academic paper. It just happens to be roughly 2,000 years old, right? So I think it's really valuable for our discussion. This is going to sound pretty counterintuitive to a lot of you all, but a text is just a collection of squiggles, and there's no meaning inhabiting any of them, whatever that might mean. Meaning is generated in and confined to the mind of a reader based on their experiences with and understanding of agreements that have been reached about what meaning is going to be linked with what combination of sounds, and then what combinations of sounds are going to be linked with what combinations of squiggles. All texts are basically just codes, and we can decipher them only to the degree we know the code. Further down, reading a text is not a matter of excavating or extracting meaning from it. It is a matter of creating it in ourselves and trusting that we come close enough to what was intended. Right, so obviously, I mean, I just think it fascinating for so many reasons, but clearly there's a lot of layers of going back to something like the Bible. But even somebody relatively new Yes, the Bible was peer-reviewed, absolutely. 100%. Because the Bible is a collection of many books. Which ones became canon is absolutely a process of peer review. So that's a really important point there, Ken. It's similar with an academic paper, because if you want to get in an academic journal, you have to go along with a lot of the current way of thinking, right? There's text, subtext, context, all of these things, right? Can spatiality help newer people unravel some of this stuff? You know, when you come in and you have all, even in the hypertext community, all these years with all these papers, some of them amazing, some of them rubbish, including some of my own, not a detriment at all, right? Okay, Tom, the Bible has got a ton of issues, but this is not about the value of the Bible or any religious or spiritual tradition. I see you're laughing, that's fine. But the point is that, okay, I'll give you a specific example, which I think translates over to what we're doing. In one of the introduction bits to make his point, he says that there's a verse in the Bible that's often quoted that says, be charitable and make a difference. Today, it's easy to think about what that means in terms of making a difference in the world. And then he goes through the layers of meaning through the years, and he says, the original way it was written, make a difference meant to divide. So it means be charitable, but be discerning in where to be charitable. Don't be charitable everywhere. Right? A lot of our own academic papers, you read stuff and the new meaning coming in and what it's based on is quite different. So how can we help someone new come in and read stuff and find out that, you know, I'm using my hand a lot here, maybe literally, visually, there are layers behind that paper of earlier context for certain sections? Because all papers are trying to sell themselves, right? Peter saying, for tools, focus on the difference between linear text, spatial text, and diagrams or graphs. Is text in VR just like a pop-up book kind of gimmick? No, it's not, Peter. Defend yourself, man. Tom Hames, anyone who writes anything is trying to sell themselves. Absolutely right. All speech, all rhetoric is persuasion, no question. Yeah, I see Peter also saying it is much more. So, Sam, you have a very rich scholarly background. Do you have any thoughts on, and let's not bring AI into it or any of that stuff, but how you, for instance, might want to author a paper. Some of us are familiar with Seven Hypertexts, the original paper, and then Dave Millard and Mark Anderson wrote a new one. These are clearly connected. But Sam, how might you write a gloss to that? How might you want to write this is what it really means according to you? Do you have any thoughts on that? That sounds very spatial to me.
Yeah. So I suppose, are we talking about about kind of a new version of writing a paper, or are we talking about like what's the specific kind of frame for the question?
Thank you for your kindness of asking that, because that's a really important question. Structure around text is really, really important. You know, of course, there's the structure of the grammar of a sentence, a paragraph, a document, and all that stuff. And we talked earlier about being able to share the spatialized views of all kinds of stuff. What I'm talking about is being able to author in that manner. So let's say you, Sam, go into the space, hide everything except for one paper that you think is important. And let's also forget PDF. You have it in a text format with images that is free floating, can do whatever you want. Your job now is to write commentaries. So we can imagine it superficially, a little bit here, a little bit there. But with your experience with this kind of writing, how would you want to write around?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I was thinking about the kind of writing in swirls idea, and I always go back to that as a kind of fantastic image about the way in which composition works and the development of it. I think there's a lot of kind of dimensions to the question, because one aspect of it is that when you're writing commentary or offering commentary or kind of collaborating, there's still an idea about a kind of fixed object that you're commenting on. So I'm thinking, we were talking about religious texts and commentary on religious texts, and depending on your particular faith, so there's a static work, and then there's commentary from scholars, Talmudic scholars, for example, which goes back an enormous amount of time with scholars referencing other scholars and commenting back and forth. And in some ways, I find that easier to navigate than attempts to render those kind of things hypertextually, because I find that trying to maintain a sense of linearity while also moving back and forth between commentary across enormous sections in enormous space and enormous areas quite complicated. So I think I was kind of going back to something that you mentioned earlier on, which is about the sort of stability of lines of text or works, and that kind of relational meaning. So when you've got a quote, for example, and yes, there's an extent to which the time in which it's being read and the individual reader determines some of that stuff. So there's the kind of Wolfgang Iser idea about the author's intention and then the interpretation, and those things as being distinct and discrete from each other, the meanings of interpretation, which is a really good kind of recent essay on it. But I think there's also the assumed stability of a line of text that somebody's written, for instance. So you may have a line which read in the present day assumes racist connotations or assumes kind of whatever other connotations it may have, but in the context in which it was written, it wasn't intended to have that meaning. So it's the extent to which that still retains that original meaning versus having that additional layer on top of it. So I suppose that question about commentary, the question is whether you've still got the static object, which then gains commentary around it. And then if you're thinking about commentary on, for example, in the peer review process, I was thinking about, going back to the Bible, how many of the apostles allegedly wrote books of the Bible, and thinking about how many reviewers you need to ask before you actually get 3 people to review it. Once you manage to get some people to actually review the paper and put comments on it, do they prefer to put it together into a kind of linear block of commentary, or would they prefer to add comments? And when I've had people providing comments in that kind of read and review style, I found it extraordinarily difficult to pass, as opposed to being able to read one block of text that somebody's written. So I think there are kind of questions about the value of exploding those versus the kind of individual object that's surrounded by commentary, and whether that commentary needs to be integrated into other works and other areas as well. And I think there's also the question of individual use cases. So is there a value to a view that's specifically for new arrivals to a community, or a view for people who are kind of old hands who want to just have the new stuff? And is it going to be something where only a small community of people can comment on a particular work? Is say you've got an awards committee who are going to decide which paper gets the best paper award? Do they have their own special view, which is maybe a bit more limited and doesn't have quite the level of kind of overlaying some kind of semantic commentary? I've been talking to somebody recently about what we mean by a community, because one idea of community is we're all in it together, and another idea about community is it's highly stratified, highly hierarchical, and actually most of the stuff that you're seeing isn't necessary for everyone to see. It only needs to be seen by a few people. So I think there's lots of kind of potential kind of environments. It's quite a nebulous answer I'm giving you, but I think that's kind of how I feel about it, which is around that differentiation. I've seen the word differentiation, which is a great word for it, but also about what manner and form of commentary is being provided, whether you want line by line. I mean, as you do with reviews now, you'll write a general feeling and then you'll go paragraph by paragraph, line by line, word by word, even in some cases, and then you put it all together in one document for someone to read. And what's the value of taking that into another space and into another environment?
Oh, so much fun. It is. I feel what came out of last year annotation discussions addresses some of that, and that is an annotation is its own thing. So it should be in line if you want it. You should also have the annotation then citing, so to speak, the original. So the shape of this, all the questions you're asking, ideally the author and the reader should be able to choose how to configure them. And it's getting really, really interesting. Just as a side note, I'm seeing some of the discussions in the chat. Now, all the stuff you just saw that I did in XR was AI helped, right? So what I do is I ask Claude to give me certain things, and then I go into Author and I manually lift it into the nodes. So AI definitely has a place in this. And this is one of the key reasons why in this environment, there's a difference between context and not context. Because I could imagine that you yourself would want to have a lot of things as your context that you have carefully curated over time, whether it's concepts or people or whatever, that you can independently control from everything else. The layer of a gloss, which is, literally writing something in the margin or something, I think is really, really important. And I don't think we've solved it in 2D or framed text. Maybe we have an opportunity to do something here. Because Sam, with the literature review process, I think that's an interesting use case. You pointed back to the Bible. One of the kind of fun things about the Bible, nobody who is in the Bible knew that they were writing anything for the Bible. It just didn't exist for a very, very long time after. And it's a fun little tidbit, but in terms of what we're talking about, when we are building on previous work, how we choose to reframe it, the original author, shouldn't necessarily know about. They may be long gone, right? But even further closer to what you're talking about, Sam, I can imagine the Hypertext Conference just started, and you have written, like many magazines have an introduction editorial that refers to what's in it, but written it in a way that all the bits refer to articles in a way that is available.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I was thinking about this in relationship to canonicity, because that's one of the things that's a big challenge for us, which is, you don't really want to establish a canon if you can avoid it, because then people just keep going back to the same authors over and over again. And the interesting authors that emerge in particular periods disappear. But at the same time, if you're a new entrant to a community, what you want is to know who are the big people that I should read, so I know what the core of that material is. So that kind of curatorial dimension, I think, it is its own risk, which is it's great to get commentary. It's great to add commentary. It's fantastic to be able to transclude. It's great to be able to say that this thing relates to this thing, and to pull other information in. But part of the nice thing about having a single artifact in the form of a paper is that if you want to pursue it elsewhere, you have to manually do that. You have to read it and go, I was interested in that, and go off and find it. Whereas if that context is a little too easy to bring in, there's that temptation of kind of overplaying specific voices or individual voices, who are sometimes just the ones who are easiest to cite. Like, there are plenty of people who get cited an awful lot just because they wrote a really good sentence that is a really great summary of a load of other people's stuff. And you go, oh, brilliant, I can just drop that into the introduction of everything I ever write for the rest of time. But actually, they're not all that good. Whereas the really interesting people, they're writing pages and pages and pages that you could never summarize. But actually, the work they're doing is really, really interesting. So I think there is also, how much are you simplifying that process for other people, or how much are you simplifying that process of engagement? And I think particularly, I can feel a lot of people getting to the edge of AI with this, with the kind of incredible AI, summarize everything that's ever happened ever and just output it for me so I can read it. That disengaged process of summarization and simplification, obviously it inevitably loses nuance. That's the whole point. Like, it's an intentional process that removes nuance from that process. And so if people just want to compress it, that's what you want to do. So I think if there is a specific thing that I would like this to do, it's that it would introduce complexity in a manageable way, rather than removing complexity in a potentially damaging or unnuanced way. And I think that's one of the things that this can do, is introduce complexity excitingly and make people want to engage with complexity, as opposed to making people want to engage with simplicity or summarization, which I think is a big potential problem.
100%. I mean, I used to read the International Herald Tribune because it was the smallest newspaper. It was kind of a summary, but I kind of knew where they were coming from. So, it could be, and what I really dream about is to be able to go into a conference or an academic community and have someone like Sam and Mark have an editorialized, this is what I think is cool, this is stupid, etc. But if there's more than one, and really the key is how you interact with them, obviously. Toggle between them, right? That's why, the gestures are great. The toolbar is actually surprisingly useful. I mean, right now I'm demoing to you guys, and I missed a few times, you know how it is with demos. But to be able to just quickly toggle between they said, and it goes like this, and it builds it like this, there's something compelling about that. I'm not sure where it can go, though.
I went back recently and together with my students did a grand tour of all of the diegetic prototyping in the Hollywood movies. You know, all of the scenes of Tony Stark hanging out with Jarvis with stuff around the room, and John Wick kind of doing his thing. You know, I mean, there's a lot of it. And some of it, of course, is just eye candy. But I think the idea behind it is very interesting, that, you know, I am doing something very intuitive. I'm using my whole body. I'm using where I'm looking. I'm doing something different with different kinds of gestures, deliberate gestures versus dismissive gestures. And there is an AI that is constantly watching me and sense making from that, so I can do something with low cognitive load. I think that looking at those things, not literally, but looking at those things for inspiration about, hey, you know, this is just, as you look at all, you know, any sort of utopian vision, is a very helpful exercise, as long as you understand that it's a metaphor.
Can I add one thing before I go? Because I have to feed my children, otherwise they'll eat one of my cats, and that would be an absolutely awful outcome. I think something I'm sort of interested in is around that question about whether it's interstitial, right? So I think when you've got a kind of navigational environment, is that navigation, is that movement, is that space something that's interstitial between the two pieces of concerted work, right? So is it that I read this and then I move into this space, but it's navigation. It's something that I go between two areas of kind of dense, rich, important information. So I read this paper, I pull out. Am I using that space to organize knowledge? Am I using that space to create knowledge? Am I using that space to actually read? Or am I using that space? And that was why it sparked this off when you were talking about that in Minority Report. All that swiping is to get from one video to another. And then when he actually loads it, it's a very traditional piece of linear video. And then you go, whoa, like this. And all that does is move you from that part of the screen over to that part of the screen. It's an incredibly inefficient navigational process. And all of those kind of visualizations are usually sweeping things around so I can move this image and this image so they're next to each other. And now I'm going to look at these two photographs in a way that I could have done in any platform. So I suppose that's the thing, is how much of the navigational, explorational, kinesthetic, physical stuff is about moving between two elements, and how much of it is about actually creating knowledge through the relationship between those elements and staying in that interface as a way to create and curate rather than just to get between two locations.
That's very thought-provoking. We care about your cat, so be careful and go. But just before you go, as a former student, I was told to cite the whole paper, not paragraph level quotes, because I need to show that I've read it. But I think part of what you're talking about is to bring back paragraph level addressability so that you have the opportunity to build these new structures slightly. Anyway, see you for coffee soon, and thank you very much for today, Sam. So Ken, over to you. You're probably never going to talk to me again after this, but a little sentence of, in the way that I'm trying to pitch some of this work now, is saying that it's almost like going from having to enter the machine in Tron to having the knowledge in your hand. This is partly why I think the AR aspect is really, really useful. It becomes very almost visceral. I'm sure you may have a thought of that, probably agree, I don't know. But since you're the Tron man.
What you're asking you're asking my opinion about how any of this relates to the ideas in Tron of, Flynn being beamed down among the programs? Is that what you're asking me? I want to be
No, what I mean is a little different. I'm trying to, I'm pitching, well, I've stopped pitching to this organization, but I sent an email on Friday, kind of like, here's a summary. And what I'm trying to say is that the headsets now are not necessarily about entering a computer environment, which was Tron. It is also about your knowledge being kind of liberated to be in your hand in the room. I think, so Ken, you have experience with all the different headsets. What is your current feeling of having a piece of knowledge in VR, different kinds of VR or different kinds of AR?
So I have a pretty harsh test that so far has produced universal failure. My test is, okay, so for example, you're showing demos every week, and I show demos to my class to get them I'll put on the headset, I'll share the screen, I'll whatever. And then there is this other thing, which is, if I weren't showing demos, would I be doing this instead of just using my screen and my track point and my keyboard?
Yeah.
And I do not find that we are there yet. We're all groping towards something that we are not quite at the point where it's that if it were just me and there were nobody around, what would be my preferred tool? And I think that's fine. It's early days. But so I feel as though we need to kind of use that Occam's razor as we ask that question. And so far, I'm not getting my work done. I'm getting a lot of work done to develop for it, but I'm not getting most of my work done in it.
Yes, I agree. However, yesterday was the first day where I was testing and I felt that something could be done. I agree, it is a really important thing. Now, in order to do work in XR, you need to have your information. That in itself is a huge barrier. Because other than information that is just on a big flat screen, which is always there, to get it in a modular fashion is difficult. What I've built is a pathway where I ask Claude to do stuff, and it replies with a format where it is term, colon, description, colon, categories, blah, 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 which I then take in. That kind of stuff, whether it's AI helped or other things, has to be there because hardly anything is spatialized now. And currently, my system doesn't save the map very well, which is why what I showed you today, even though for me being in it is quite compelling, it's not actually useful at all. But once we get to the point, hopefully this week, where you can put on a headset, move stuff there, send me the file, I open it, and I see your spatial view, I think things can change a little bit. But like most knowledge stuff, if it's not shareable, if it's only for yourself, it's almost like a paper napkin. It just isn't in the workflow yet. You know what I mean? I do agree we're not there yet, but I have to believe it's right around the corner.
So meanwhile, in the spirit of shared failure, I've been working on some things that I wanted to show, and they're clearly not, they didn't cross that Rubicon of, oh, I'll do all my work here. But I'm sort of learning about like, hey, how bad is this? This works, this doesn't work. So I want to show some things. So if you remember, I showed a few weeks ago that little Wikipedia thing. And I can take that and I can turn that into a hierarchical set of nodes. So I did two things. Last week, I created a very, very simple visualization in mixed reality and handed that to the students in my VR class. And I said to them, do something better. You know, this is a visual representation of a hierarchical node structure of a Wikipedia page. I picked the Wikipedia page of virtual reality because it seemed appropriate. And then I gave myself the assignment and I said, okay, I'm going to start trying to play with this to see if I can do something. And one of the things that immediately came out was, if I'm going to be spatially arranging pages, like I'm going to be doing links and jumping to things, it's nice to have a visual representation of a page which makes sense when you're far away. So I really like the outline structure because something can be visually small, and unlike a Wikipedia page, which is meant to be seen at this constant distance, it can be an icon of itself. So I've been making some progress. I'll share some of this. It's, you know, got a lot of deficiencies, but what the heck. So I'll
Please.
just share my
Yeah.
I guess I'll do this. Here we go. So this is my room that I'm in right now. And I'm going to do this. And well, first of all, I'm actually going to show the thing I showed to my students. Where is it? Okay, we go there. This is what I gave to my students and told them, you know, play around with this. Here we go. There it is. So this is not this. I'm not happy with this. It just gives us sort of a sense of this is structure. So the idea is that's the virtual reality page. And if you get really close, you can read the text. And it's not something I would actually ever use, but it's a kind of, okay, well, that's something, you know, that's doing something in the space. Okay. If you get the idea. All right, that's just the Wikipedia page. So then I spent the last few days trying to do something better by using interaction. And this is as far as I've gotten. I don't have links working yet, so it's only one page, but the idea is this is meant to be hanging out in a world with lots of pages. So if I'm using my controllers, which you can see when you look at the screen of me, you know, using my controllers, I can go up and down here, and blue means there is text. Red means it's just a node with no text. And if I want, I could lock that in, and then it sort of knows if I go over it. And that the reason for knowing it over it is that eventually I'm going to get to the point where I can just pick individual links and then create a new page. But this is really just the graphics. I haven't done that yet. And, you know, I can move the whole thing around, blah, blah, blah. But then I asked the question of, suppose I wanted to, and, you know, you could lock it and then it stays there no matter what you do. And then you could also unlock it and then you can explore again. And these are just the different levels of what happened to be in the VR page in Wikipedia, that page of Wikipedia. I'm just taking that text as source material. And then I said, okay, suppose I wanted instead to do this with my hands. So I'm going to put down the controllers, and now I just have my hands. And the idea would be that, you know, I should be able to just pinch and move it around or scale the whole thing if I wanted to make it iconic, you know, and put it somewhere. But if I wanted to do this, then I have a different set of gestures. I can take my finger and I can go like this. And now I'm just going through this thing like this. And then I can, you know, do this, or I could lock a page and say, okay, that's locked now. And then the idea would eventually be that I would, just do the same thing with my finger that I was doing before. I would just take my finger and I would, like, you know, highlight something and say, okay, pinch to jump. And then it would create a new page somewhere. So that's as far as I've gotten. And it's not yet at the point where I would use it, but I'm kind of hoping that at some point I will get to the point where I will start using this, and this will be around my room. And if I want to use the Wikipedia to explore things, I'll just start walking around my room and creating an assemblage of pages and referring to them and moving them around. And, you know, there you have it on Iron Man. So that's that. And then on top of that, I would start to ask questions about how would I bring in AI? But at this point, there's no AI. This is 100% manual, because I want to make sure that I understand what the, you know, how this works with my body. So that's where I am so far. And I don't know what my students are going to do. They'll see when they show me their stuff in their class tomorrow. So I'd love feedback from people.
I've got some feedback. First of all, thank you so incredibly much for sharing. It's really, really good to have real demos in here. Secondly, being able to do controller and hands is really, really cool. It also highlights the importance of having actual data, right? Otherwise, what are you doing in space? I think it's many, many years until people will start creating from scratch in XR, for sure, to have access to something. I also actually like that currently it's quite 2D. It is 3D in the space, but it is a freedom of knowledge wherever you want it. I mean, even an iPad or whatever, you have to lift around, right? So I just thought it was really, really inspirational because it's quite different from the rest of this stuff. Over to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, Ken, that looks great. I was just wondering if you have a plan. Are you planning to use depth in a systematic way, or is that going to be something where you drag things to where you want them? What's your
Yes,
thought?
and in fact, what I'm trying to do here, this very specific design here, is that a page remains a 2D artifact. And then I'm going to start asking the question, so because I don't want to overcomplicate things. And then the idea is you have multiple pages, and how do they relate to each other? Do you put them around you? I mean, I've done other demos where I put things around the room and you walk through things and this and that. And I'm just trying to kind of understand. But I feel like if I start making the page itself not 2D, it's going to overcomplicate the design when I start doing multiple pages together. So I may end up doing that, but I don't want to start there because I think that would weigh things too much before I've even begun to organize.
You said a clever thing regarding all of this, which is make it small enough so it becomes an icon. You said iconize or something.
Mhm.
I think that's very, very useful. I'm wondering, being inspired by Jonathan, if you get beyond a certain size, maybe its visual characteristics can change a little bit.
Oh, I should show you another demo then. Sorry. Let me share another demo with you then, because I've been playing around with exactly that question. So if I share that screen again, and then we go back here, and let me just make this, yeah, it's good enough. Okay. Put this on. I played around with some other things. This was let's
Actually,
see.
Ken, can you click the little arrow, 4 arrows to the right, so we can see it even better on your traditional
4
screen?
hours. Right. I'm sorry, what?
On the kind of video overlay, bottom right, if you move your mouse cursor, comes back.
There?
No. A little higher up and to the right. There, on the
Okay.
right.
Oh, it's probably
That little thing in the bar at the bottom there.
okay.
Up again.
All right.
Little up, little up, little up. And to the right.
All right, there you go. Okay,
Okay,
yeah.
fantastic.
I was
Now we
going to
can
do that after.
concentrate.
Okay, great. All right, no problem. So let's see. This is, I think it's this one here. I believe it's this one. Yes. All right, and then resume. And so if I actually, I could probably walk around my room here, but I'll just bring this toward me and say, oh, it's showing both demos at once. Let me just, let me actually
That's
refresh.
just very impressive.
Yeah, I know. I didn't actually want that this time, but I'll do it this one. Go. There you go. Okay. So this is a Robert Frost poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. And I have it all around my room, as you can see. It's all around me. If I bring it toward me, which simulates me walking, and I get closer, what happens is at some point it becomes the poem. And then if I get even closer than that, it becomes the analysis of the poem. So it's all based on virtual distance, size, visual size. It's based on visual size. And the idea would be eventually I'd walk up to any content. These could be the different Wikipedia pages, for example, whatever it is. If I'm close enough, it's just the title of the page. It would just say virtual reality or whatever. And then as I get closer, you get the outline at some point, and I have room to play with. And the goal would be that eventually, just like Tony Stark does, I intuitively walk up to something because I'm interested in knowing more about it, and I don't have to think about it. That would be, That's the design space that I'm going for.
That is really cool. Yeah, that is exactly the kind of thing we need to look at. You know, we need to look at what should be text, what should be graphical, what should be flat, what should be spatial, how should it be spatial, how should we interact with it? Thank you.
Oh, and also that is a place where I kind of feel like some of these AI tools could be really useful. I need a summarization, and there was no summarization before. And hey, that fits in the visual space right now, because I don't want to have to. I never want to have to do that manually because I may encounter something new. Wouldn't it be great if there's a book and the AI just says, oh, you have enough space right there visually for me to give you a little summary, this size of the book. And as you get closer, further away, it's dynamically creating summary information of different sizes because you're at different distances. That would be consistent with the way I'm thinking about this.
Yes, the lines that you've seen in the system that I'm developing, there were too many to begin with. If I selected all persons, the thing would slow to jelly. And it didn't have much informational content. But Ken, what you're helping me understand is that if someone builds an environment where they have their known context or basic stuff like Peter Wasilko has behind him now in books, so to speak, when you select something, those lines become a star shape that means something. You know, why is it pointing to the left, to the right? You know, after a while, you know where things are pointing. That may also, Jonathan, be colorizable. And maybe when you zoom out from an item, that star shape could actually be its icon. Right? I'm not sure if you're familiar with spider graphs or diagrams, I'm sure. In computer games, where I know them mostly from, you know, you have a circle, this is a gun, it's very good at this, not good at that, all of that, right? So we can start building different shapes in such a way. But then we do need to have a familiar room shape or context shape.
I'm still not convinced. I know that this is a design philosophy you've really embraced. I'm not convinced that at the end of the day, people are going to want to see things in terms of this thing's over here and then there's a line connecting this to that. I think it's one of those things where we need to present people with the different alternatives and do human subjects testings to see what people really adopt. The thing that worries me about the line stuff is it may or may not work with the way people's spatial memory works. We would just have to see.
I am 100% agreeing with you. It's just one kind of fun at the moment visualizations. But I'm also thinking people's curiosity seems to be dropping because you ask the AI, get an answer. People don't have to navigate information to get a deeper understanding, that kind of thing. To have things presented in different kinds of spatialized way. And this is why I'm so hot on metadata, because you're absolutely right. We should make it as a template exactly how we want, but they should be able to do it differently. Should be able to switch between the templates because people may have different domain knowledge, but you absolutely shouldn't constrain it to that. That is really, really important.
It would help me. Does anyone else have any thoughts about suggestions or comments about what I showed? Because it's a work in progress and I'd love to get people's feedback.
Yeah. Should I speak? Yeah. Yeah, Ken, I mean, you may have said this, maybe I missed it, but it's the plan to have, obviously you could get hierarchical with you're showing a Wikipedia page and you'd have more and more detail and possibly following links, or whether you're following links or not, more and more levels. Is that the plan? And then you would get
the unit,
things building up.
The unit would be the thing that I shared recently was I'll just type let's see nodes. I think this was it. I think if you click on this, that should work. Yeah, and if you highlight, this is I built the page into a hierarchy, hence the different shading, and then I returned it back into text again. But if you click on any word, it then it then goes to that page, and then off to the right, it creates a map of the pages you visited and their structure. So it could be any word. It doesn't care whether Wikipedia itself made a link. It's just any word that is a Wikipedia page or any phrase that you highlight, it'll jump to if Wikipedia knows about it. And so what I'm trying to do is a spatialized version of a unit is a page. And then the pages are assembled around you, and then there's some notion of breadcrumbs or history, or these are the pages that I visited yesterday. Maybe they gather around me because I'm revisiting a topic, but it's like the page is a post-it note that then becomes one atom in the universe of pages that I'm interested in. That's the way I'm thinking about it right now.
So Ken, in context of all of this stuff, the difference between what you showed and what I showed is the different category of data, right?
Yeah.
Maybe in the community, we should kind of look at one specific kind, not for all our work, obviously, but for instance, today's meeting, what I'll do is tell my good friend Claude to turn it into a glossary. So it'll be all the names, all the keywords, hopefully all the cool statements. The cool statements I'll treat as citations in space. I'm wondering how that data might look in your environment. Should I send it to you in a kind of a plain text format, a little bit marked up? So maybe next time or soon we can look at the same meeting in different ways?
Sure. Send me data and I will try to visualize it and we'll see what happens. I think that's fun.
Yeah, because what's really exciting is that we're doing it so very, very differently. I wish there were many more approaches. Unfortunately, Fabian is busy on other things and so on. But share data.
I would just like to add, I mean, at this point, I think it's really important to add that technology is easy. Good visual design is hard. And so I feel as though most of what I'm pushing on here is trying to figure out what is a useful visual and interaction design. I don't have any problem with the programming. I program lots of things and almost everything I do sucks. So then I reprogram it and try something else. But the things I'm iterating on is what actually feels good when I'm playing with it and when I'm looking at it. So that's why having different kinds of data would be really helpful. So I can say, oh, how much is it the same and how much, that doesn't work.
I would add to that, Ken, that the visual side is hard, but even harder is the smooth, useful interactions. And I'm very happy to add that to what you said, because that's what you just demonstrated. The way you moved through that was really, really elegant.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that was smooth. We're kind of out of time, but there was one more thing that kind of came up with this. Oh yeah, hiding stuff. You know, I've been showing you guys the focus mode forever. And I'm wondering how that applies to what you're doing, Ken, because one thing that is not working fully in my environment now is if I select something and then I do focus mode, everything goes away, but it's connected to something that's visible. If I now select that thing that was connected, whatever that does doesn't necessarily certainly make these things appear, but it seems to me, I mean, they're going to try to make it happen. It seems to me that being able to access what is not visible is also really important. You're doing it through, you know, this kind of zooming, semantic zooming. I'm wondering if you have other ideas of easily navigating a space where you don't necessarily see all of it.
Yeah, also, because the Wikipedia page is a hierarchical structure, I am playing some visual tricks where at first you just see, I show the entire outline because the outline is small enough that there's no reason not to. But then the actual text underneath anything, everything after that item is temporarily pretty much invisible. And I drop the text just after that item. And that way you're always seeing the hierarchy and then you're seeing the one node you're interested in. So that's a design choice that is assuming a certain set of reasons for wanting to explore something.
Very cool. All right. Thank you, everyone. And look forward to seeing you next week. We will continue the discussion with a slim thread of a conference and go all over the place, as we always do. If you do have some specific ideas of that, or an annotations, or topics for future along the lines of what Jonathan was talking about, please either mention it next week or send me an email or something like that. All right. Have a good week, everyone. Thank you for today.
Yep, take care.
Bye.
Thanks for the demos, Ken.
You're welcome. Bye.